It matters when your company is running out of runway, who you have as your investors. It matters to your long-term ambition as a founder, who you have as your investor. Like, I think founders think about money, and I get it, because especially when there's been a funding crunch, people are just like, I want to get the money through the door. Cool. But you pay for those things later down the line.
Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our extraordinary conversation with Rumbi Makanga. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, hit pause and go check it out. That's where we talked to her about hiking in the Sango, prophetic dreams, poetry, storytelling, the Zimbabwean art scene, and why Zimbabwean banter might just be our country's greatest export. But today we're going to be talking about her career and space tech, venture capital, all those kinds of things. As a reminder, Rumbi Makanga is an investor, a founder, an ecosystem lead, and a global strategy and transformation executive. She has built ventures, backed entrepreneurs, and led across product innovation and commercial functions in global environments. She's worked in financial services and space tech, but underneath all of that, she's also a Zimbabwean woman who's navigating multiple worlds. Rumbi and I are part of the same broad Zimbabwean ecosystem. Vimbai and I are so glad to finally sit down with her and talk about the stuff that never makes it to the LinkedIn bio. So here we go on to part 2 of our extraordinary conversation. Rumbi, we want to talk a little bit about your career now. So you studied land economy at Cambridge. How on earth did you go from studying that to getting into the world of VCs and investing?
Yeah, good question. So land economy is essentially law, economics, and environment.
I've had a lot of people who studied land economy. I basically used to recruit almost everybody from land economy program at Cambridge.
That is so funny. Because there's only 2, right? There's only land economy at Cambridge and land economy at Nkrumah University in Ghana. Fun fact, yeah.
Really? Those are the only 2 places you can study land economy?
Fact, yeah. Maybe it's changed now, but certainly that was the case when I was at uni. And this is at the time that I was at university, there weren't a lot of paths. So the 3 paths were banking, law, and consulting. And me being me, I remember I spent 3 years at uni going to the banks. This is when banks had money. But the banks would come to campus and they would put on these lavish meals, and I would be there asking questions oh, JP Morgan, what do you... But I had no interest. I went to all the banking dinners, all the law dinners. Got to the point where I should have been okay, what am I going to do? And I didn't really have a sense. So I had an offer from Bank of America, but I just didn't see myself as a banker. So I thought, you know what, let me see what else I can figure out. And then I happened to get this internship at a firm that was commercializing deep tech IP. And I thought, this is cool. And this is at the time that Entrepreneur First was just launching. It was a nascent time for, I think, tech in the UK and in London, but really exciting for that reason for me. So I started working in deep tech startups, gained a lot of very niche, I didn't realize it then, but it was very niche kind of exposure to hardware startups, companies doing material science, nanotechnology, coatings tech.
And what was your first role as an analyst?
It was, the structure of this firm was essentially it was a strategy consulting firm, quote unquote. But the actual way it worked was we were basically seconded into companies. So my roles were basically biz dev analyst or commercial blah blah.
So you'd be seconded and work for not somebody in your actual consulting firm, but work for somebody in a startup who would just have you as a hired gun, a really smart person who can do cool things.
Yeah, because essentially the firm that I worked at was essentially the commercialization partner for highly technical founders. So these are people that are really smart, have developed incredible technology. They're just not so good at the commercial strategy. So we would be seconded in as the commercial person. The very first company I worked in was they were doing corrosion monitoring for oil and gas pipelines. And the founder of that company, the CEO of that company, had such a pivotal impact on me. It was literally me and a bunch of PhDs, which was so intimidating. But he was the most, people talk about servant leadership. He really embodied that. I was really young, I was really inexperienced, but he never talked down to me. He really put a lot of faith and trust in me. And my job in that company was to plan out their expansion plan. So they were doing oil and gas. He was looking at different areas And I ended up helping them expand into geothermal in California, which was cool. And I think the level of trust that company gave me, the level of responsibility I got super young, ended up just giving me so much confidence. So after that, I did a bunch of other projects.
How long was each secondment? Was it only a few months, or would you actually stay with one company for like a year?
It varied, yeah. So some companies would be like years, not even a year. It'd be years. Some companies, it would be shorter term, especially these are startups, especially if the company just isn't going where it's supposed to go. Because I had one company I was given when I was like 22. And this was a company that had 3 months runway, and my job was to build a pipeline, a sales pipeline that convinced investors to put more money in. They developed a machine learning engine that detected threats online across open, closed, and darknet. And we ended up selling into Apple, FIFA, Comcast, Rolls-Royce, Pfizer, those kinds of companies. And yeah, like that was essentially my start, working across these different kinds of technologies and these different companies. But yeah, very much hands-on in these commercial roles.
That, I must say, is a really, really awesome role and a really, really valuable skill set. Because in a lot of startups, what you have is people who are brilliant, who have the idea, but they haven't actually like nailed how to commercialize it, and they haven't actually nailed how to sell it. And there's a delta between having the idea and the product and being a viable company.
Exactly.
And someone like you is what so many people need, but they realize a little bit too late that they need to bring that skill set on. I saw a post on LinkedIn. I didn't know how to feel about it. It kind of pissed me off. I saw it yesterday, and it said, no founder should hire anybody in their sales department until they've reached like 1 million of ARR. And it said, because the only person selling the product should be the founder. The founder should be the only salesperson, no support, anything. And then I thought, yeah, that's like, very noble, but sales is a process. And sometimes a lot of like thought needs to go into how you're actually going to get from 0 to 1. And simply thinking that it's down to you as a founder alone, you just need to make more phone calls or something, or you're not trying hard enough, is a big mistake. So I love what seems like your niche, your skill set in your early career. That's awesome.
No, it served me well, and that actually is what ended up nudging that shift into VC. I ended up doing a lot of fundraising for these companies, which led to a deep curiosity about VC and how VCs thought, how they worked. I think VCs have become a lot more demystified now, but back when I was in those roles, VCs were like these evil little gremlins that controlled money and said no to everybody all the time and felt really great about doing it. And so I actually got into VC because I was like, I actually just wanted to like deconstruct VC decision making. So I did a fellowship that landed me at Episode 1, which is a deep tech firm. Loved it, like really great experience. And it happened to coincide with a time when I was thinking more deeply about being involved on the African continent. I did that, but I chose not to work in European VC at that time. But I actually started advising companies on the African continent. I started investing as an angel at that time. And then eventually that led me to joining Kwanda as a co-founder. And Kwanda is a non-profit startup.
That is really cool. VCs do get a lot of flack, but I think for some people it's because they simply don't understand the VC business model. And VC funding is not for everybody. And it may not necessarily mean that they don't like your company. It's just that it's not suitable for a VC investor. And that's where there's a lot of a misalignment. I personally feel like there are some companies that chase VC investment to their own detriment, where they probably could have been, like, not everybody's going to be a unicorn, and that's okay. Sometimes you can build a company that's perfectly fine. It's great. You change a lot of lives. You do a lot of great stuff for people, but you're not going to be a unicorn, and you're misaligned with the expectations of your investors. And so it takes people in a direction where they build things that are very far from what the founder initially wanted.
And I think like how Colgate became like the word for toothpaste, I think VC has become the word for investing. And I think that has been such a problematic shift because exactly what you say, very few companies are actually VC scale. But because VC has become the code word for I'm investable, founders chase that. It's like a stamp of approval, but it doesn't actually mean anything unless your company scales, achieves significant revenues, or it can exit. And yeah, it's a huge thing. And I remember actually, because I started speaking out about bias in VC quite a few years ago. And I think because of that, people think I'm the person that's always going to be like, yeah, these investors rejected you because they're racist or because they're sexist. And I've been very unpopular in very many situations where I've said, no, it's because your company's not venture scale. And that's okay. That's not a pejorative. That's just a reality. And I think it's something that the VC world, and I don't know if it should be their responsibility, but I think they've also not been very good at educating potential companies like about what those expectations are, because what you said about companies having misaligned expectations with their investors, and that's when company founders get removed and they don't know that that can happen. That's in the terms, but they don't know that can happen, or that they don't think it will actually happen, or maybe it will happen to those guys but not to me. But it can happen because once investors have that stake in your company, that gives them the power and the authority to make decisions about your company.
Exactly.
And the thing I wish founders knew more, I think people think of like loans, it's like real like financial education 101. People think of like debt as very expensive, but equity is so much more expensive. That's why you must be, as a founder, very circumspect about who you give your equity to and like how you do that, and like obviously if you do that in the first place. But even for companies that are companies that are VC scale, I feel like no one's taught founders how to actually be very thoughtful about their cap table construction and who am I bringing. It's like money is not money. It really isn't. And I think I'm quite grateful that I've gotten to work. I've worked in 2 VC firms that are very well respected. And I think it's also like seeing, so I don't know what it's like to work in a fund that's, I don't know, just doing interesting, weird, crazy things. But it is so important that founders are very circumspect about how they move through those processes, because it matters when your company is running out of runway, who you have as your investors. It matters to your long-term ambition as a founder, who you have as your investor. Like, I think founders think about money, and I get it, because especially when there's been a funding crunch, people are just like, I want to get the money through the door. Cool. But you pay for those things later down the line.
So one of the things is I don't cut corners on legal. There are a lot of people who scrimp on that. Many years ago, I remember hiring like a cheap and cheerful lawyer to review our term sheet. And, you know, they said, oh, this is great, this is fine. Tick, 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 tick. And then later I hired someone who was not cheap and cheerful, someone whose prices were eye-watering, and I was going to go into debt just to take a bit of legal advice on maybe a term sheet. And this dude uncovered all the gremlins, every single gremlin that the cheap and cheerfuls don't even know to begin to look for.
Exactly.
And a lot of times investors are kind of, and I'm not shady, but investors are banking on founders who are too broke and too unsophisticated to bother to do the work to find the gremlins.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you know, founders of a certain background, if you're not well advised, you maybe don't come from, you know, an environment where other people know how to navigate this world. They are the ones who must say, oh, my uncle has a friend who's a lawyer. He said he'll just like look at he'll just charge me his hourly rate to quickly look at it, like put it into ChatGPT and it says it's okay.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, bro, you need just part with your hard-earned money. Get a real bulldog, because they have bulldogs on their side and the gremlins are there. The gremlins are hiding. And and it's unfortunate. One of the people we're having on our podcast who's coming, she is a woman who wrote a book about how to raise funding. And I was reading this book of hers. And in the early chapters, she's talking about this phenomenon where a lot of times people are raising equity, they don't realize how complicated it can be and all the different ways and all the different scenarios you have to game out. And it's not your job to do it. Just get somebody who actually knows how this works.
Exactly.
But yeah, we went off on a tangent. You're listening to Extraordinary Conversations with Ask Chenai. But have you actually asked Chenai yet? Are you drowning in admin? Think you can't afford to hire help? Think again. At Ask Chenai, we match busy people with smart, reliable virtual assistants, all based in Harare, Zimbabwe. And our packages start at just £159 per month. I'm Chenai, and I built this business because I was tired of wasting money on flaky freelancers. I needed support I could actually trust, so I went back to my roots and tapped into one of the most talented workforces on the planet. Our team are not your ordinary virtual assistants. They're extraordinary for extraordinary executives. Stop drowning in your to-dos. Start focusing on what really matters. Whether you're a founder, freelancer, or time-starved exec, Ask Chenai is your unfair advantage. Visit askchenai.com or email sales@askchenai.com to find out more. Let's help you get your time back. I really want to I want to know about the work that you've been doing in space tech. Because it sounds so cool. I see you writing about space tech on LinkedIn, and the extent of my knowledge of space tech is occasionally I see an article, maybe in the New York Times or The Economist, talking about really, really unusual use cases for space tech, some of which seem like a reach. Like, really, are you just like tagging onto this? Is this really going to be like one of the use cases, or is this like a secondary / tertiary application? And then other stuff is like, in Zimbabwe, we all use Starlink.
Yeah.
So that is something that I can see. What, can you give us a for dummies? So what is space tech, and how can and how should space tech shape the future of the African continent?
The answer of what space tech is actually varies across different firms, what different people think. Essentially, in my interaction with space tech, it's literally been the actual infrastructure in space. So we're thinking like, satellites typically, but also other like larger commercial or government infrastructure like the International Space Station. There's also a lot of downstream with space tech. So like the actual applications of space data. That comes into things like Earth observation data and how it can impact, let's say, agriculture, because now you can map different places, you can see, the soil profiles and how you should be farming, and there's loads of companies that are doing that actually on the African continent in terms of helping to advance that. So I think there are such different, space is broad. When I worked at the previous firm I was at, there were 3 sort of categories that they talked about. There was like Space 1.0, which is like, all the government infrastructure being put into place, like the ISS, blah, blah, blah. Space 2.0 is more this commercial thrust of like, companies launching satellites into space and launching different kinds of infrastructure into space. And then Space 3.0 is the stuff that's actually happening in space, so the in-space economy. So that's like refueling stations for space vehicles. That is...
That's all the stuff that allows the space economy to exist, not necessarily... I get it.
Yeah, because one of the big issues actually is like a rocket takes up most of its energy just getting into space. So once it's in space, to get it to like maneuver and move around, like, right now they're having to like send rockets back to Earth essentially, because there's, so that's where the refueling in space comes from. So you can actually enable this like in space movement and economy. There's a lot of really cool stuff around in-space manufacturing, both for like materials. Pharmaceuticals is another area that's progressing quite interestingly.
That's what I read about. I read about in-space manufacturing for pharmaceuticals. And, I am, like, my background, because I'm really weird, Rumbi, I began my career as a scientist in drug discovery. And I thought, guys, are we not doing too much now? Do we really need to go to space just to manufacture drugs? Like, what?
Well, I think you'll then understand this better than I will, and I think then maybe you can adjudicate on whether it is necessary or not. But the examples I've seen is to do with the crystallization process, that, the microgravity environment in space enables a much more stable setting for that crystallization process. So what I've seen so far has been a lot of stuff around like the development of cancer drugs, so getting to a point where we can have cancer drugs that are injectable. So somebody who's doing like chemo and that kind of thing doesn't have to go to hospital to receive their treatment, which to me sounds really, really like a positive advancement. I think if we were being very, very cynical, and we're looking at like why, because it's expensive, right, to manufacture in space right now, like why is it worth?
Yeah, this is the thing that I struggled with. This is the thing that I was like, is it really, even if you can create an environment that is so optimized for the crystallization, which I will tell you, I have spent many days trying to crystallize a compound. I get it. But like, is the easiest way to solve that problem really to send it into space?
I don't know about easy, but Yeah, I mean the conditions are good, but yeah, I think the cynical thing is that it enables pharmaceutical companies who have drugs that are nearing the end of their patent period
to renew the patent, because now the patent is predicated not on anything about the manufacturing itself, but the formulation. Okay, this I get.
That's the cynical part. But I mean the costs. Cost of space infrastructure is going down significantly. So, maybe we will see a day when actually these injectable cancer drugs are feasible. I think the things that got me really excited were the potential for, space-based power stations that could power the whole planet. Things that can really transform the Earth for the better, because there are definitely things happening in space that I have my own questions about and like my own question marks about, especially like the waste factories in space, like just dumping our waste in space. and I think as humans, one of the things that I find very frustrating actually with the whole space discussion is like this whole like let's go and colonize Mars, and I'm like, we already did the whole colonization thing, like don't we remember how that worked out? I just find it so bizarre that... Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, there's this whole language around these things as if it's like a new thing. And it's like, we've literally done these things before. And what we've proven is as a human race, we have not been able to care for our planet right here, which is why we're having to go and like explore space to colonize these other planets. I'm just like, sometimes I get frustrated because I'm like, you guys are so smart, but these things just feel so dumb to me sometimes. But... that's, I think, an indictment on a very small number of people. I know most of the people I've encountered who work in space tech are incredibly genuine, incredibly smart, have really great ideas about how to move humanity forward. But that whole, like, billionaires playground thing for me is incredibly frustrating. And it's also frustrating that that's, like, the thing people think about when they think about space. It's become a conversation. Yeah, it's become a conversation about that. Or that one time Blue Origin sent Katy Perry into space. And it's like there are so many incredible women working in space, so they could have highlighted and promoted in that moment. And so it's frustrating when like there's all these little not little but all these moments where we have an opportunity to do better and we don't.
But we all know who Blue Origin is now.
True. It got people knowing about them. That is true.
I certainly didn't know.
True.
Yeah. So,
I hadn't thought about it that way, but true.
Yeah. You're listening to Extraordinary Conversations with Ask Chenai. But have you actually asked Chenai yet? Are you drowning in admin? Are you juggling a packed calendar, relentless responsibilities, and a million things on your to-do list that never seem to get ticked off? At Ask Chenai, we understand that your time isn't just valuable, it's irreplaceable. That's why we match busy people with smart, reliable virtual assistants, all based in Harare, Zimbabwe, who can take life admin off your plate. Think you can't afford to hire help? Think again. Our packages start at just £159 per month. I'm Chenai, and I built this business because I was burnt out trying to do everything myself. So I created the service I wish I had, run by a team of brilliant, educated assistants trained to move fast and get things done. We're not your ordinary virtual assistants. We're extraordinary for extraordinary humans. To find out more, visit www.askchenai.com or email sales@askchenai.com. Let's help get your time back and your life back. And you are an angel investor now. What kind of ideas get you excited? Do you invest based on certain themes, just passion projects? Do you constrict yourself to certain sectors?
Yeah, I definitely do have a deep tech leaning in how I invest. I like, actually not just deep tech, I think like deep tech, B2B SaaS is probably the broad range of categories I invest in. I like ambitious founders. I like a huge amount of ambition in setting up a company and trying to solve really hard problems, which I guess is very like deep tech. And so the last company I invested in is like fintech architecture for the African continent, trying to build the rails to enable more investment in the community, not the community, the continent. So really harnessing that diaspora capital for doing good. I think, I'm trying to think if there are commonalities around like the founders.
Oh, you said it. Ambitious. You said it. Ambitious founders who think. There are some people, was it Y Combinator or somebody who said, maybe I am going to misquote this, and we might have to edit in post, but I read something about how Andreessen Horowitz said he doesn't even care about the idea or anything. Sometimes he just gets two founders. He doesn't even care what they're building, but if he believes in them, he'll bring them on board because he believes that once they figure out what it is that they're supposed to be building, they'll succeed. Because the biggest measure of a startup success isn't actually a good idea or anything like that. It's just how much hunger, drive, intelligence, like who is the founder, are they going to make it take off, which is a bit depressing.
Yeah, and when I started in VC, I used to feel like that was a really weird way to invest. I was like, this just feels like you're just throwing money into this whole accusation that they're throwing money into people they like or people like them.
Yeah, because then it just feels like a club. It just feels like a club.
But having spent more time in the industry, I really do. The founders are so pivotal. And especially, I think, investing at the stage I invest in. If I was like a Series B, C investor, I think I'd be looking at different metrics and considerations, and there'd be metrics to look at. But if you're investing at pre-seed, angel pre-seed, which is when I invest, you are very much making a bet on these people being able to figure it out. And like very few of the huge ideas we have now started off in the form that they did. And it was actually those founders spotting something, pivoting and creating something new.
And I'm asking for a friend. What are you looking for in... When you say you can tell, when you meet a founder, you just know they have the magic, they have the spark. What is it really? What does it come down to? Because there are so many founders that are just like charlatans. And maybe those are just the ones you hear a lot about. You hear the stories of people like, why was Anna Delvey? I know she's a bad example, but I picked her because she's safe. She's on Netflix. Others, I won't name drop them. The examples of there are books written about how everyone's like, how are they able to con so many investors and then lose all the money and then get given even more money? Like, what are the investors seeing that we can't see? Because this person's obviously like really sketchy. But they've got it. So what is it?
I think that's a very Silicon Valley it. I think it's a very that's something that, I think there's a reason why so many of those founders have been within, or the one I'm thinking of, the one who has raised like billions doing this, is American. But obviously you see it elsewhere, like and I don't want to offend anybody with this, but the Forbes 30 under 30 to fraud pipeline is strong.
Is it? I believe that. I believe it.
It's a thing. It is a thing. Listen, it's not this. The data's out there, but I think there is definitely an archetype of person who's very good at like talking the talk. People that are very good at just like schmoozing people. And I think the problem is that when it comes to VC, one of the things that that I think a lot of investors like to see, the ambition thing, you've got to be confident, right? You've got to be able to, they need to believe you can go out there and like smash through walls and da-da-da. And so if you can talk like that, if you can say, hey, I can smash through walls and I can da-da-da, then the Anna Delveys of the world succeed. And the Blood Lady, what's her name?
Yeah, exactly. And she's starting another one. Same type of company from prison.
Because the thing is, I think it's a really weird psychology with investors, but it's like someone who's that daring is gonna be that daring again, and maybe the next daring thing they do is gonna succeed. And I think the other thing to think about is, I think when you look at incentives, if you're a Sequoia, like there was a company, I can't remember what the amount of investment was, but Sequoia lost like 100 million. And it was like such a tiny proportion of their total AUM. And so it's like they're also incentivized when they have so much money to just throw it about. It really, to them, it really does not matter. If it does well, it does well. But if it doesn't do well, they're not going to be bankrupted tomorrow. So I think that's part of like the American context. But obviously we still have those founders outside of those contexts. And I think, again, like a person who's good at, talking the talk is always going to be good at talking the talk. And when investors do not have, especially at pre-seed, when investors do not have really robust diligence processes, that's where these things happen. So to your question about like what I like, so yeah, I do like
you, I was going to kind of say, okay, we've had like now this sidebar, my fault about like how other investors decide investability in a founder, potential in a founder. But how do you do it with your skeptical brain and having seen all the things like bias? How do you actually do it?
Yeah, so I wouldn't call myself a skeptic, actually. I think I'm very much I think there's two classes of mindset around this. One is like, what could go wrong? I'm very much a what could go right. Like I like to see the potential in that and talk it through.
You squint for the yes.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm like, oh, okay, can I see it? And I think actually that comes to one of the big things for me. I think because I come from the background I come from, and I have sold and I have worked operationally in startups. If I can see a vision for a company that the founder can't see, if I can basically create a strategy for the company better than the founder can, I don't invest, because as much as they might benefit from my coaching, I can't run a company as an investor. So I need founders who have a really strong sense of how their company is positioned. They know the pieces in their industry, the pieces in the market. They know where the arbitrage exists. They know the potential risks that could come up. They know where the opportunities lie. And they have a sense, and it's going to change. It doesn't mean that like their sense today is going to be the correct sense, but they have a sense of the strategic advantage they have and how they're going to go after it. From a practical perspective, that means we know that these are the kinds of customers that we'll be able to sell to right now. Our target market is like 100 billion because everybody on earth has a phone. But it's people who have a really clear and precise idea of what the problem is, what their solution is, who they're going to sell it to, how they're going to sell it to them, and how they're going to make money. And actually the final one, that how they make money, is something that a lot of founders typically, they'll have great ideas, but they haven't thought about like how do they actually
commercialize it. I see that a lot.
How do you make money?
I have seen that a lot in my career because like you, I used to be a strategy consultant and I've done in-house strategy, and a lot of times people are like, Shania, that doesn't matter. And I'm like, does? The number of times I've been gaslit that my question about how the money is actually going to be made, the number of times that's happened, I couldn't tell you. And a lot of people don't really think about that.
Yeah, a huge amount of founders. And I think also, unless because I've sold in like difficult conditions. Like when you're trying to say, I like when I tell people something, like I sold like stationary, like process and system improvements for stationary gas engines. There are 10 large like companies that you're selling to globally. And when you're selling in a context like that, like it's challenging. I have sold wind turbines in Italy, in Italian. I don't speak Italian. And when we've sold in like difficult conditions, you know how hard it is. And I think one thing founders tend to underestimate is how challenging it is. They'll have their nice little projections, 30% month-on-month growth. It looks great in a spreadsheet. Can you do it in real life? So these are the things that I try to evaluate. And I think just having had the experience, I can be like, okay, yeah, look, this is where you're going to go wrong. This is what's not matching up. And I think the advantage for me has been that I walk the talk, and founders like that. And so founders tend to want me to invest because of the expertise that I bring. But yeah, a lot of companies for me just don't quite cut it. Because like I say, if I can do it better than you can, then...
Yeah. Do you know what? We could have this conversation forever, but I'm going to stop. Yeah. We could have this very conversation. This conversation alone could have been its own podcast, but Vimbai, over to you.
Thank you so much. So today we have learned all about VCs and investing. We got that one-on-one, and we got like the crash course on deep tech and space tech. Super cool stuff, super exciting. And I've actually learned quite a lot on investing. And Chenai, I think I've got like ideas. I think I can also become a founder now. I think we're getting there.
Founder of what? You work for my business. This is the problem we have in life. I'm here with my head of ops, who's supposed to be my number 2.
Why are you blocking her blessing?
The one who's running the show, and she's being inspired to run away and start other companies. She's
like a bird.
With Chenai, we're starting a new business idea every day. I kid you not. In 5 days, we've got 5 different businesses. So now, Chenai, I can effectively be your number 2.
I literally have 2 businesses. So I'm the last person to tell Vimbai that she can't go. But Vimbai, the reason why I can do that is because I have you.
I didn't say I'm going tomorrow, Chenai, and I'll go with you.
I still wait, Vimbai. Okay, fine. I still wait, Vimbai. You can't run away. You're staying here at Ask Chenai.
No, I got you. Don't worry. We'll figure it out. We'll work around it. Rumbi, thank you so much. Like, I really am enjoying this conversation. And so speaking with you, because this is like two different generations having a conversation. And I'm wondering if you had to have a conversation, you're sitting together with your 16-year-old self. No, wait, let's make it your 9-year-old self and your 16-year-old self and your 80-year-old self. What are you guys talking about?
Dang, I find the future one really hard. I think the 9-year-old, the cool thing I think with how my career has turned out is like when I was a kid, I was really obsessed with briefcases. I don't know why, but I really wanted to be somebody I wanted my job to be something where you could use a briefcase. And funnily enough, I've never used a briefcase. I should buy a briefcase. And so I love the 90s padded shoulder as well. So I feel like the really cool thing with speaking with my 9-year-old would be that we did it, Joe. I feel like I get to live a life that was beyond my wildest imaginations. I didn't know anything about space tech or VC or tech. So I think that would be really cool. 16, what was I doing? I was doing GCSEs. I used to want to be a UN economist. So I think that would be an interesting conversation of like, why did you abandon our dream to be a UN economist? And what is this new direction that you went on? But I think I would like to think that in the work that I've done and in some of the things that I've gotten to be involved in, that element of, because I think I still use my economics brain a lot in investing and like in understanding, because I think there's so much like of microeconomics that comes into understanding how companies function and like how companies make money and unit economics and blah blah blah. 80, I don't know. I think at the end, whenever the end is, I would just like to look back and just feel like not only that I got to do some interesting things or that I got to, get involved in some space tech has been the absolute pinnacle of the what the heck in my career, where I'm just like, whoa, even I'm like, this is so cool. But I would also like to have been able to make a difference, to have had a positive impact, that people's remembrance of like my impact in tech and VC was that I nudged things to be better, that I spoke out on things that I felt were ridiculous. Yeah, I don't want my career story to just be about like, oh, she was like really successful and she made a lot of money. To me, it really matters that my impact on people was really positive.
But what are you talking about with each other?
I don't know. I'm saying I can't do the future ones because I'm like, it's so abstract for me. And I'm like, what if, I think in my brain, I'm like, what if I don't live to 80?
That's why when I said, I was like, that girl be like, girl, I made it to 80.
Yeah, do you know what? I think I would just be so bewildered making it to 80. I think, I don't know how usual it is. I think I lost a lot of people, like, who are my peers, young. Yeah. And so I think I've grown up with a sense of I don't even think about, like, I don't know, I feel like every day is a blessing. I think that's why I struggle so much with 80. I'm like, hey, 30, I'm 32. I'm like, 33 will be great. And then 34, and then 35. Yeah, I think that the thing for me would just be like, oh, like I can't fathom 80. The one thing I can say though is I hope my 80-year-old self is still like really silly and goofy. I don't want to become serious.
Yeah, I like that. And all things considered, you've already impacted Chenai. You've taught her the thing about handing things to somebody with the left hand. You've taught us the whole stuff on the finance. Yes, Chenai, I see your face. I see your face. You didn't know that when we started. So you see, you're already making an impact.
Thank you. I think I'd definitely be prouder of that than a lot of other things. Like, you know how many people can say that?
Girl, you guys, don't speak too soon. You'll see me out there doing something and you'll take back your words.
Yeah, do you know what? Oh.
Okay, the conversation has been absolutely amazing, Rumbi. And we are going to go to our final question. My signature question, you have been warned. I want you to imagine that we are in the zombie apocalypse, by which I mean the zombies are here. They are taking over the world. You have 3 options. Option A is to accept defeat and simply become a zombie. Option B is to say, oh my goodness, I cannot possibly live in this horrible world, and basically end it right then and there. And option C is to fight the zombies and try to survive in this wasteland. The key being, you don't get to imagine yourself being some other tough person who knows how to fight all of a sudden. If you spend all your days eating pizza on the sofa and you haven't been to the gym in 2 years, this is the body you're taking into the zombie apocalypse. So what is your option?
Not to throw a spanner in your question, but I feel like I actually dreamt COVID-19 before it happened. And so me and my people were prepared. So all I'm going to say is... I'll give you two answers. Number one, I'd like to think that I would have seen this coming and I would have either made preparations to have a bunker somewhere, because I really actually don't want to be caught up in the mess. If I can avoid it, when you see zombie shows and people are just like hidden in their house, because I feel like if you're not exposed, if no one knows where you are, I don't know much about zombies. So that's the first thing. But I think I would hide. That's not one of the options, but I would hide. I would go underground, bunker up. And then if it came to it, I would fight. Even if I die, I feel like I'd want to go out swinging.
Hiding is an option, is C. Hiding is C. Because when you're hiding, you're saying, I will live in this world. I want to protect myself in this world.
Yeah. Ration my food, wait it out, because eventually something's got to change, right?
No, eventually they'll come to where you are. Eventually. You cannot hide forever.
I already failed at rationing my food, guys. It's late.
If you watch The Last of Us on HBO, there is a character who has your strategy of hiding. It works well in America, where you can just go to Walmart and buy 700 guns. You can live in the middle of nowhere, barricade yourself. Here in the UK, where do you live? In central London?
The thing is, I live right by a military base, so I would be the one who would, I'd find a way. They've got to have bunkers there.
And you would be the one. There's a military base of people who know the military base, but you would be the one who corralled their bunker.
Because I had a dream, right? So when everybody else was living their lives, I was out negotiating and ingratiating myself to whoever will let me into the bunker. You know what I'm saying?
Your underground gang works over time.
Look up, I'd be buying tissue. This is what I do. I'd be buying tissues, because you know what people do when they panic? They buy tissues in the supermarkets. So I would have all the tissues with me, and that is how I'd get into the bunker. There you go.
In your bunker with toilet paper.
And buckets. We'll figure it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this week, Rumbi Makanga. If this conversation moved you, you share it with someone who's building something brave, a fellow Zimbabwean navigating multiple worlds, or maybe just a quiet person trying to trust their own dreams. Thank you very much for being here, Rumbi.
No, thank you. I had a great time. I don't like doing interviews, actually. But this was fun.
Didn't feel like an interview, did it?
This was fun. I feel like I got to show up as myself.
That's great. And I'm glad you got to do that. Bye, guys. You're listening to Extraordinary Conversations with Ask Chenai. But have you actually asked Chenai yet? Here's a thought. This could be your podcast. You've got something to say, a story to tell, a brand to grow. But between editing, scheduling, writing the intro and promoting it, who has the time? That's exactly where we come in. At Ask Chenai, we match busy people with smart, reliable virtual assistants, all based in Harare, Zimbabwe, including assistants trained to help launch and run podcasts. We can help you plan your episodes, schedule guests, write show notes, edit audio, and even create your social media posts. Think you can't afford to hire help? Think again. Our packages start at just £159 per month. So if you've been putting off your podcast, blog, newsletter, or brand building, stop. Go to askchenai.com or email sales@askchenai.com. Let's make your voice heard.